So thank you. Just a word on policy, which feeds into what I'm going to talk about. We're here to talk about local democracy insofar as it still exists. We've seen a gradual trend of parish councils closing down because they can't actually find people willing to do the job. And this is how you can win at the most local level. You can win simply by putting your name forward and turning up. So it's never been easier because you've got so little competition. But we are gradually watching the process of the abolition of local democracy. And this started when we got rid of town clerks, and all of a sudden we have council CEOs on 110, 150, 170,000 pounds. These are executives, and our local government has become regional development quangos with budgets that dwarf that of Iceland and with debts to match. And the establishments, the local establishments, they don't want you there. And they don't want you there because you're Homeland. They don't want you there because you're a citizen. Because you are intruding on what they view as their domain. And the councillors that are there, who hasn't seen a bridge too far? Good. Right, so you remember as they're withdrawing from the North Bank in Arnhem, they put all their dead and wounded on the machine gun posts to give the outward impression that the army is still there. Well, that's as they're evacuating, and that's what they've done with our democracy. They've put councillors on the machine gun nests, to expand the metaphor. They're giving you the outward impression that we are still a democracy, but they have gradually taken powers away. It is now the top executive team that decides where the budgets get allocated, and councillors are entitled to express an opinion, but their actual powers of veto are vanishing all the time. And certainly where I live, 2020, I lived in Hambleton Council. That's up by Thirsk. I don't live in Hambleton now. I live in the North Yorkshire region. That's, it's as far down south as Selby, bordering on Doncaster, going as far north as bordering on Middlesbrough, Whitby, Scarborough, and Ripon. That's the size of 100 countries in the UN. And as such, that's not local, because if I want to get to Ripon, to Scarborough or any other part, that could be a 2-hour drive. This is not local, it's not structurally local. And these little quangos, these dunghills, they don't want you snooping around. And while you'll find, as a councillor, especially on the lower levels, you have very little power, you do have one thing: you have a title. And with that title, you've got a golden ticket to stick your nose in where it's not wanted. And you can be an activist, and then you can be a community leader. You can help people in their communities. They might come to you with something as basic as a pothole. Everybody complains about potholes. Now, the next person that complains to you about a pothole, you say, "Did you report it?" No. Well, that's why it didn't get filled. But that's the one thing you can do. You can just go, right, we'll just go on the North Yorkshire website, report a pothole, here's how you do it in future, but I will do it for you. So you can do the basic stuff like that. And then maybe there's a planning objection. Plenty of those about. You can take those. You can do that kind of thing. That's the bread and butter thing. But certainly from my perspective within the party, we try our best to produce credible, detailed policy. but we're not experts. We don't have, none of us have worked for think tanks. Very few of us have had direct experience in the Westminster machine. My exposure is limited. My exposure to local politics is limited. So we're going to need to cultivate our own expertise. And you are going to be our subject experts on all the places around the country, and we're going to need to hear from you. We are going to need you to report on your activities, not just the I was out on a litter pick, not diminishing that sort of stuff, but we need you to be part counsellor, part private investigator, part journalist. You've seen how Rupert Lowe, at my suggestion, I'm pleased to say, has been firing off all kinds of ministerial questions. Well, councillors have that same ability, where you can look at the budgets, you can look at what's being spent and where and how, and though you might not have a say in it, though you might not have a veto, you can certainly ask the embarrassing questions, and you can see behind the curtain, and you can be the whistleblower. You can ask what's being taught in our schools. You can report back on whether council tax payers are funding drag queen story hour in schools. You can raise the alarm. And you can report that back to, the more we hear from you, the more we can feed that back into policy, and the more that policy will serve you. And we then see you as our instruments to affect local policy, and I apologise for not doing a presentation, but I've got a few points of overall national and cultural things that are battles that can be fought on the local level. For a start, we've got the low traffic neighbourhoods. This is absolutely classic of the regional development Quango mentality. This is a Whitehall initiative in order to meet international legally binding targets such as net zero and our commitment to carbon reduction. And the designs have come from quasi think tanks and NGOs, and they've been fed through to local council CEOs and executives, and they decide to implement them without consultation and without consent. And these are remote people. They don't live in the areas where they are disrupting and diminishing quality of life. So they've come in, they put their bollards in to suit their ideology. They've caused chaos, they've caused congestion, and we've seen with LTNs, people have taken matters into their own hands. They've removed the bollards and the stupid planters. They've actually had to go as far as vandalism, but we've seen local campaigns, and we're seeing that through leadership in opposition, you can win. You can win these battles one by one. And I think LTNs is one of those battles that's been won, but of course across Wales, again, we had this top-down mentality. Oh, Cardiff has decided all of Wales is going to be 20 miles an hour. Who? Have these people ever driven have these people even sat in a car? Do they have the first clue? But no. This is what you get from centralised bureaucratic quangoification of local government. So this is what we hope to push for on the national level. We believe in real local democracy, and we want to reverse the amalgamations. We want to put as much power back in the hands of parish councils, control over budgets. Moving on to the next subject matter, we've seen effective local campaigning from, I believe it was the English Democrats when they won I think it was the Doncaster mayor or something. They said you can have your pride events, but the council is not going to pay for them. And we have seen, there was a time when You might have your own view on this, but there was a time when there was a necessity, a basic necessity for pride. But we have seen over the years how that has been corrupted and co-opted by the LGBTQIA, etc. movement, which has become an excuse for public lewdness, all manner of degeneracy, up to and including drag and drag queen story hour. And this has been adopted wholesale. You will go into town and you'll see on that particular day, the town hall will be flying the Progress Pride flag. Well, that's something that you can raise the alarm. You can lodge your objection. You can say, this, not with my taxpayers' money. This is a political cause. You do not have the right nor the authority to be pursuing a political cause. So we then have the more the ground level stuff. Because of net zero policies, because they're ramping up the price of energy, councils increasingly can't afford to heat their swimming pools. So we've got record numbers of adults who can no longer swim, and then they're selling off the playing fields. These are the issues that are making us less healthy as a nation and reducing our opportunities for community interaction. So wherever you see that transpiring, you have to oppose it and you have to raise the alarm, you have to report back. Then once you've got your golden ticket to go nosing around, just lately they're talking about putting up council tax by 15%. Now we talked earlier about whether it should be higher or should be lower. I'm not particularly interested in that question, but I do want to know that every last penny they take from me is being spent in our direct interest. And that certainly doesn't extend to the £60,000 a year that they're spending on diversity coordinators, diversity and inclusion people. And councils have got dozens of those. So you need to be going through the payroll and saying, what are these people for? Why do they exist? Why are we paying these people? Same with council CEOs. Why are we paying anybody who works on a council £170,000? Nobody is worth £170,000 unless they're bringing that in. And so we need to be seeing results, and they need to be held accountable. So these are the sorts of things that really get on people's nerves. The fact that basically the town clerk earns more than the Prime Minister. Then lately, because of net zero, certainly where I live in the Vale of York, we've had dozens of planning applications go in for battery storage and solar parks. And this is chewing up not just prime agricultural land, but it is destroying our landscapes, the landscapes we are custodians of. And we have to fight this, we have to oppose it, not least because where you see a solar farm, you're not seeing energy generation, you are seeing a subsidy grift. That's all renewable energy ever was. It's stealing money directly from your communities and destroying your landscapes to do it. So this is something that's going to ramp up, particularly under Ed Miliband, if he survives. So yeah, people you will find on Facebook, you will find opposition pages. Certainly there's a Stop the Thirsk battery farm. You need to be going on those, you need to be getting involved, finding out what they intend to do, join in, help them stop these things, and they will thank you for it. And that's how you can make a name for yourself, get involved in local causes. I notice planning application has gone in for my village for housing. There's 3 zones. And this will essentially double the size of my village. And this is going to destroy our village because it will no longer be a village. It won't even be a town either. It will be a dormitory. And what this dormitory town is essentially going to be is a refugee camp. It's going to be white flight coming out to our village, changing the nature, changing our community, turning it into something different. The picturesque village that it is now, it is no longer going to be that, because we have so many people escaping our cities. And we need to point out that this is a consequence of voting for mass immigration parties. And so we need to, we do have a say in whether these housing estates can be built. We don't want to be NIMBYs, but we do want to preserve what we inherited, what we are custodians of. And we certainly do want to be NIMBYs for as long as these developments are a consequence of mass immigration. So yeah, get involved. Be the NIMBY. Then when we come to budgets, we want to be holding government to account. There is, I believe, a law brought in under Cameron where there's supposed to be a local referendum on any increase in council tax. Well, they obeyed that for about 1 year until they decided, right, what we're going to do is add money onto the police precept and create new levies and the business improvement district levy and all these little additional charges, which are now almost equal to the size of your council tax. And this is how they're subverting democracy. Well, again, you want to be raising the alarm. So we want to hold them to account to make sure that they're not taking more than they should. One issue is particularly close to my heart. I am a low tax individual, and there was one time I just thought, I've had enough of this. I'm actually going to withhold my council tax on this, and I knew what the consequences would be. The councils are greedy and they are predatory, because it's not just the council tax. They do this if you happen to accidentally pass into a bus lane, they'll send you a £30 fine. They have a voracious appetite for creating fines. Once they do that, they've got zero tolerance. They don't even give you a fortnight. They will say, right, we'll chuck it straight through to the courts. The courts will rubber stamp it. There's no human involved anymore, and it goes straight to a local firm of private bailiffs. Now, I don't know how much you know about bailiff law, but these people, they know the law, but they do not obey it. And they go after single mums, and they go after elderly, they go after the vulnerable, and they hound them. And I've actually watched them come up to my door, knock on the door, or pretend to. This is what they call phantom visits, where they will knock on the door and immediately run away and say you weren't in, but because they visited you, they can add a charge. And this is what they do. Each time they knock on the door, they will add 500, 600, and there's no limit to their greed and their theft. And a lot of these fly-by-night companies started off at 2 or 3 little private bailiffs, and some of them have grown to companies like Marston's that cover entire districts, and they're worth millions. The guys who started these companies that feed off the misery of the poverty that councils themselves are creating. It's wholly parasitic. So we need to protect our own people against these parasite bandits. And so you need to be talking to people, finding out how you're getting on. Are you keeping up with your bill payments? Who's coming after you? Be their guardian, be their protector, and you need to be campaigning against the use of private bailiffs. If council's going to steal this money that they're not spending in for our good, then they need to show their own faces and they need to obey the law. One of the things they do, you put in a complaint about a bailiff, the council ignores it, says, not us, report it to the bailiff regulator. Well, the bailiff regulator just happens to be a council of the bailiff companies themselves. It's totally corrupt, so you need to keep an eye on that kind of thing. You save somebody from these predators and they will vote for you for life. Then we come to immigration. This is you might have heard me talk about this before. We keep hearing the Tories and Reform saying, we'll put a cap on and we'll get rid of illegal immigration. Yeah, sure you will. But none of them are ever willing to tell you how. Now, we're starting to see how this plays out in the USA. I don't know if you've seen on Twitter last few days, factory owners are saying, look, none of my workforce have turned up. We got word that there was going to be an ICE raid and nobody's come to work today. And that is what you get from local enforcement. Now, you can do basic enforcement on a local level. Everybody knows where you find illegal immigration. You find it in your takeaways, your car washes, your Turkish barbers. That's all the visible level stuff. But we're now finding, there was a story, I think it was Doncaster or somewhere out that way, one of the old Wilcos in the centre of town had been boarded up. And without anybody knowing, it turned into a cannabis farm. And you find one of those, you find, guess what? Illegal workers. This is the kind of thing that isn't picked up on with big blitzes from central government. You uncover this stuff when you have routine enforcement. And it happens when you've got environmental health officers going and inspecting takeaways. It happens when you have trading standards officers going to find out if the local shop on the corner is selling cigarettes to kids. It's doing the basics of quality of life enforcement of the law that councils should be doing, but instead they're not, because they say, oh, we can't afford to do that. They can afford their £175,000 a year council CEOs, but they can't afford an environmental health officer. They can afford a diversity and inclusion officer at £90,000 a year, but they can't afford trading standards. It's funny how that works, isn't it? They're stealing from us, and they're making everything worse from not enforcing the basic law. So these are the ways in which you can direct local authorities to affect our national ambitions. And just doing daily things like problem parking. You know, nobody likes getting a ticket, but where my parents live, top of the road, they put in a takeaway. Nobody wanted it there, but now it's there. Anybody who comes to pick up their order just parks across the top of the street. Where's the enforcement? So it's nowhere. So if you want to get out of the end of the road, sometimes you can't get out of the end of the road. Other times you have to nudge into the main road to get past the cars parked on the corner. They've got parking officers, down in town where they know they can make a mint, but not the kind of quality of life enforcement in the suburbs. They're not waiting outside schools for the lazy people who are going to park on the crossings. This is the kind of basic enforcement that makes life work. It's what made Britain the high trust society it is. It's why we queue. It's central to our character. And these are the things that are breaking down, that are making daily life just that little bit worse. And it's about upholding the most basic of standards. I do have a longer list of these kind of angles. Certainly, if you happen to represent a town, it only takes a small nest of about 2 or 3 heroin addicts to affect somewhere in the region of £200,000 worth of retail losses in thefts a week. This is how much they can steal, and this is what sucks the life out of town centres. And very often you can send the police in, you can lock them up, but, we've seen how that works. They come straight out. But it doesn't actually cost that much. I think the going rate for a decent drug rehab worker is about £25,000 a year. And that is some of the best money your local council can spend. Because if you've got someone who is ready to come off drugs, if they've got 1-to-1, the way they do it at the moment, they'll send a group of addicts. And if there's one that's not ready, they'll disrupt it. and prevent anybody else from even wanting to come. So you need one-to-one treatment, and that's going to be some of the best money your town can spend, because if you can eliminate the losses from theft, and if you can eliminate just the unsightliness of junkies. I noticed this in Sheffield and Nottingham. Nottingham is shocking at the minute. These are symptoms of where we've started to abandon the basics just to save a few quid here and there. Now that would be fine. Well, no, it wouldn't be fine, but it would be more acceptable if it meant we had lower taxes, but we don't. We are paying record taxes for ever fewer services, and we are letting the basics rot. I won't ramble on too long, but what's another cornerstone of our culture? Pubs. We are seeing pubs converted into mosques, or we're seeing them turned into flats, or turned into any use other than pubs. I became involved, the village from where my grandparents were from, Skelton-on-Ure, near Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, the Black Lion, it'd been derelict for a lot of years. Our community got together and we managed to raise somewhere in the region of £200,000 and got match funding from the local authority. That pub is now, it's starting to open on a more regular basis, but it's going to be the village post office. It's going to be a restaurant, it's going to be a meeting hall, and out in the beer garden we're turning it into a campsite. This is not something I've been directly involved in, but I've chucked a few quid their way and I bought a £1,000 share in it. But these are the sorts of things you can do to make community hubs, and these might be your future meeting halls where we grow our party. So that's also a great way to make friends and actually achieve something of lasting value for the community. Certainly you want to get involved in licensing boards, particularly in towns with ethnic minorities, because as you see Muslim populations grow, they get involved in the licensing committees, and gradually you'll see the pubs disappearing from your suburbs. And this is something we want to at least halt the decline, if not reverse. But the cornerstone of your role as a council, as I say, you are as much a representative and you're as much a campaigner as you are a journalist. If you need to be reporting not just back to the party, but if you can use something like Substack, of course people use Facebook to report their local activities and they have groups. But through that, you can cultivate a Substack, and by doing so, you get subscribers, and by having subscribers, you essentially have a mailing list, you have their details, you can grow your own online. Now, having an online constituency, as I've got 40,000 Twitter followers, and that's influence. It's good influence to have, but there is no stronger power than having an online constituency that's quite large, that's local to you, because that's a force you can mobilize for the good. It's something you can mobilize to protest with, or it's something you can mobilize to do something like restore a pub or get a gate fixed on where people walk their dogs, just the little basics. And it's about the attention to detail. And it's the little things, they clearly matter. Litter picks, that's important, but you want to be building and you want to be scrutinizing and you want to be screaming from the rooftops where people are being robbed blind by these quangos. They ain't democracies. And until we manage to have our great revolution and somehow take control, we are not going to live in a democracy. This isn't a democracy. And as I say, they don't want you. They just don't want you sticking your nose in. So that's precisely what you must do. Thank you.